Hey guys, you're listening to the Inspirational Power Hour, and I'm your host, Chandra Wise. And listen, today I am so super excited to talk to an amazing author of one of, I think, several books, but one specific book that I think has been so important for the church, for Christianity. And I'm so excited to share his story and his book and his newest venture with you. So I'm talking about none other than Mr. Lee Strobel. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Chandra. Great chatting with you.
Listen, I immediately got excited when I got the message about the book. And I'm talking about the book, The Case for Christ, being turned into a movie because this is actually required reading at our church for our ministers in training.
Oh, terrific.
So definitely one of the books that so many of our ministers had to read. So let's just kind of jump into the jump into the story of the book. Can you kind of give, in your own words, a brief synopsis of the story?
Sure. It's a true story of my life where I was an atheist, a skeptic, trained in journalism and law. My wife, Leslie, was agnostic. She becomes a Christian through a neighbor. And I react very negatively toward that because I didn't want to be married to a Christian and didn't understand it and felt jealous that she was being pulled into this other culture. And but I decided to take my journalism training and legal training and prove to her that Christianity was false, that it wasn't based on anything true. And so I spent 2 years doing that investigation till I came to the conclusion that the evidence does point powerfully toward Christianity's truth. And that's when I came to faith in Christ, and then both of our lives began to change from there.
And you know, one of the reasons that I love your book, Lee, is because I think it gives such a very relatable, when you get into apologetics, it can get a little deep and a little heavy for especially new believers and people just coming to Christ. But your book, I think, is really one of those that anyone can relate to and begin to understand that conversation.
Well, thanks for saying that. I see my book as a bridge between the scholarly world and the everyday world, because I'm in the everyday world. I'm not a scholar, but I can go to scholars. I can ask them the tough questions about the faith and then put it in the language that all of us can access, because that's what I did as a journalist. In fact, we have a new edition of the Case for Christ book, a movie edition that's coming out this month, where we have a new chapter in the book, updated information, updated archaeological discoveries and manuscript discoveries, a new chapter, and that book's coming out this month as well, a movie edition of The Case for Christ. The poster from the movie is on the cover, which is kind of cool. But the thing that excites me about the movie is that a lot of people may not read a book, and a lot of people may not even go to church, but they're willing to come to a movie theater. And if they come to this film, they're going to, first of all, be very entertained, because John Gunn, who's the director, has produced an incredibly entertaining film. It's a love story. It's a father-son story. It's a big city journalism story. It's a story about true story of a case that I investigated as a journalist, where I proved that the police had wrongly accused a young man of shooting a police officer when he was totally innocent. And all that's wound into the film, as well as the spiritual journey of discovering about the evidence for Jesus. And I think a lot of people are going to emerge understanding the gospel for the first time and understanding the evidence for the gospel for the first time. And we're excited that it may launch a whole bunch of people on their own spiritual journeys, that we'll see many come to faith in Christ.
So, and that's the question that I was going to ask you. How were you all able to kind of transfer the message of this book, kind of coming from being so research heavy and information heavy, to a story that would translate on the big screen? Was that difficult to do?
Yes. One of the things that I had put in my contract with PureFlix, who made the movie, is that it had to be written by Brian Bird. Brian's a terrific film writer. He's written 17 films. He's a good friend of mine, and he knows my story very well, and we worked together, and he was able to craft a story that is just a great entertainment. It's an amazing love story, a marriage story, a father-son story, a police story, a new journalism story, all intertwined with this investigation of spiritual evidence. And so I think, some people may say, well, how would that book translate to the screen? That's a good question. But you'll be absolutely amazed at the power of this film. My wife and I just watched it again last night. We have an advanced copy, and And my wife has watched it now 6 times. And I said, well, why do you keep watching it? And she said, because I'm trying to get cried out. I want to get all my crying out of the way so that when I see it in public, I'm not going to cry. Because it's a movie with great emotion. People will laugh. I think they'll cry. I think they'll see themselves in some of the characters. And so we're very optimistic that when this hits theaters on April 7th, we're going to see a lot of people have great experiences through the film.
Awesome, awesome. So the release date, April 7th, guys. We definitely want you all to check this book, check the movie out. And if you haven't read the book, go ahead and read the book too. I think it'll be great preparation for the story. So the movie edition of the book, when can we expect that?
That will come out on February the 22nd, so coming up just shortly. You can pre-order that at any online bookseller. And it's kind of fun to see the Mike Vogel, who plays me, now on the cover, and Erica Christensen, who plays my wife, on the cover of the book, playing their roles in the film from the poster. So we're very excited about that because it's important to keep the information fresh in that book. So we're glad to be able to refresh that.
Awesome, awesome. So Lee, as I said, I because this is required reading at our church, I reached out to a couple of our people that I know, and I asked them if they had any questions, and a couple did, and I wanted to ask them.
Yeah, sure.
Dana wants to know, she said, you and your wife coming from you being an atheist, converting to Christianity, she wants to know, what encouraging words can you give to someone that's in a current situation where they're waiting for a loved one to accept Christ and they're trying to lead them in that direction?
Yes. Oh, I'm telling you, this film really hits that issue because it shows what happens sometimes when a non-believer and a believer are married, and it can be very difficult because the values are different, their priorities are different. There's a lot of clashing that can happen. Well, what I suggest is my wife and I wrote a book about this. It's called Spiritual Mismatch. And it's all about what do you do if your spouse is not a believer, or maybe they're a believer, but they're not growing as fast as you. They're lagging behind spiritually. What do you do? And we poured ourselves into that book. It's got a 30-day prayer guide in it. And so that book's available, Spiritual Mismatch, that I think will really help people in that situation.
Awesome. So LeJune wanted to know if you had to estimate about the impact that your book has had, and how many people do you think, or have you heard testimony of people coming to Christ or accepting Christ through the message of this book?
It's in so many thousands that I've lost count. I tried at the beginning to keep track because every soul matters and every story matters, and I'm thrilled whenever anybody comes to faith through the book. But we've just been inundated over the years with the stories of how God has used the book in people's lives. I don't even know, tens of thousands. I don't know. I get, every time I speak at a church or an event, and people come up and say, oh, my father came to faith through your book, or I came to faith through your book, or our children are reading your children's books and coming to faith. It's just a thrill because I'm an evangelist. I want to see people's lives changed by Christ. And to see how the book does that has been thrilling. And one of the amazing things is the single biggest group of people who've come to faith through the book that we've been able to track have been young people, 16 through 24-year-olds, young people. And this just shows that young people are interested in evidence for the faith. They are interested in what's true. And we don't really live in a completely postmodern world where people don't care about truth. They do. They know it matters. And I'm gratified by that.
Absolutely. And so the last question, really quick, Valerie wants to know, with an advancing technology age and a lot of the distractions of the world, she wants to know, how do we continue to make the case for Christ with the younger generation?
Well, it's a great question. I think the key to the young generation is relationships. It's friendships. It's listening. It's respecting them. It's validating them as people made in the image of God. It's getting together over coffee. It's chatting about why they believe what they believe. It's listening to what they have to say. It's gently bringing a Christian message into the conversation. But I think this next generation, the millennials, are all about relationship. And even though technology, you're right, is important, and I'm on Twitter, and I engage with a lot of people on Twitter, at Lee Strobel is my Twitter handle. I enjoy technology, and we're grateful for it. I do think that the personal touch, that the one-on-one friendships and conversations are what God uses the most.
Awesome. Again, guys, this is Lee Strobel. He's talking about his latest movie from the book, The Case for Christ. And I want to encourage every believer, please pick up a copy of this book and read it. It would definitely bless your life. I think this book is also important in relating to our young people, because this is such an information-driven generation, with so much information. And Lee presents that and packages that in such a great way. So please pick up this book. Go see the movie. Give us the release date for the movie once more.
April the 7th, which is the week before Easter. So it's a great chance to go, to invite a friend, and then invite him to Easter services at your church.
Absolutely. And so give us all of your, how can we connect with you online? You gave us your Twitter handle, but how else can we follow you?
Yes, my website is leestrobel, LeeStrobel.com, and we'd love to have visitors there.
All right. Thank you so much, Lee. We truly appreciate it.
Well, Chandra, you're a pleasure. God bless you and your listeners.